Okay, so this afternoon, ano ganing reporting naton class? So the topic is design rule. So si Sir Giancarlo Hautea. And if matapos ni Sir, no, kung kaya pa kung early kita matapos, we can proceed to implementation support by Ma'am Joanne May Deluson. Okay? And sino pa gani class ang wala pa naka-report? Ang wala sa assignment, I mean. Reporting. Oh, nagahanghang man ang akong laptop. Anyway, so for those nga wala sang assignment reach sa reporting, you can visit our assignment no sa aton nga reporting assignment, and I added there 3 topics. So this is a nagahangkit. Okay, this is a research article already published no latest 2019 or 2020. You can click this link kay na-download ko na siya nga daan. And then you can read kung diin ang gusto nyo nga i-report. Okay, so medyo laba ni siya no, may ara siya 1 to 30 or 1 to 40 pages. All you have to do is just to get the highlight no or summary sang ano, hindi man gid kinahanglan gid nga report tanan. Okay? So may tatlo ako ka topics nga gin-add like physical programming for blind and low vision children at scale, and notes of memories fostering social interaction, activity, and reminiscence through the interactive music, exercise game developed for people with dementia and their caregivers. And the next is user interpretation in human-computer interaction. So, butang nyo lang pangalan nyo, di. So, amo na. Sa mga wala pa naka ano. So, first come, first serve. So, kung una, kadaya, kag nanamian ka sang topic, sa butang mo lang pangalan mo, okay? Wala na, nadula ang akong gina-share. Makita nyo man to class? Ma'am, ako na lang po sa user. Yes, please write your name na. Presentations. So, butang lang ang pangalan ha, para nga at least may nakasignify na nga siya ma-report. Wala man. Wala nag-share actually. So, I will just give you the link. Though hindi man kita nun. Okay? So, I think we can start. So, Sir JK, you are the first to report.
Yes, ma'am. Ma-share lang ko, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Sure.
Ito ang screen ko, ma'am.
Yes, please. You may start.
Sige, ma'am. So, good afternoon, everyone. My report is about design rules. So, when we talk about design, syempre meron na siya, when it comes to software, meron na siya usability nga ginatawag. So, based on sa ISO, extent to which a product can be used by specified users to achieve specified goals with effectiveness, efficiency, and satisfaction in a specified context of use. Okay, so usability is a quality attribute that assesses how easy user interface are to use. So it has 5 qualities. Learnability. So how easy it is for user to accomplish basic tasks the first time they encounter the design. Okay, so I think makita niya siya natin sa sa matatagalog pala. So makikita natin ito sa sa user manual, or let's just say if we ever bought a device, meron niyang dalang user manual to teach the user on how to use the product. Efficiency: once users have learned the design, how quickly can they perform the task? Okay, so yung efficiency, it may vary sa, for now, I guess, sa specs or sa kung gaano kabigat yung application or yung system na ginagamit, and balance ba siya sa device. So, memorability: when users report to the design effect after a period of not using it, how easily can they reestablish proficiency? Okay, and number 4, errors. How many errors do user makes? How severe are these errors? And how easily can they recover from the errors? Satisfaction: how pleasant it is to use the design. Okay, so on quality: absence of problems, discovers usability problems, and reduce their efficiency and severity. It can be measured, and objective data, performance data derived by behavioral data, user observations, subjective data, self-report, questionnaire, or interview. So as an example, sa picture natin, makikita mo na yung MSN space na ito, which is an old na, at saka meron siyang part na I think Japanese ito or Chinese. So it may be useful for Japanese or Chinese people, pero hindi siya general. Okay, so and then another example, meron tayong makikitang phone, which is iPhone ata ito, at saka iPad. So meron siyang function na yung, for example, yung sa iPad, meron siyang 4 na button which will be used as which will be used for navigation within the system. Okay, yung sa may phone naman, touchscreen. So sanay naman na siguro yung tao dyan. So hierarchy of consumer needs: functionality: a product will be useless if it does not contain appropriate functionality. A product cannot be usable if it does not contain a functions necessary to perform the task from which it is needed. Usability: once people had become used of having appropriate functionality, then wanted products that were easy to use. And lastly, the pleasure: having become used to usable products, it seems inevitable that people will soon want something more. Products that being not only functional benefits but also emotional ones. So, in this diagram, as you can see, the first thing na nasa baba is the functionality. Kasi I think yan yung base natin. So kailangan yung functionality ng isang system or ng isang product will be the base, and then above that has the usability, and at the top will be the pleasure. User experience is a complex response to the interaction with computing system. The responses is a consequence of individual predisposition of the user, example, attitudes, motivations, and needs. Characteristics of the interactive system, example, purpose, functionality, and usability. Contextual dependencies, example, task and environment. So here again, sa may example, Sa user experience natin, mostly user, product, social factors, cultural factors, context of use, magiging if we combine all of them, and it will fall on the interaction, and then the result or the feedback that we will that the system will receive will be the user experience. So user experience, it has a positive. Good design is more than absence of problem. Add extra value to design, emotion, fun, personal fulfillment, and then holistic, pragmatic qualities, traditional usability dimension, hedonic qualities, non-task related beauty, challenge, stimulation, and self-expression. Subjective, usability, focused performance, and task can be objectively measured. Hedonic attributes related to the user self, which is subject to deep variations among individuals. So sa ating user experience, meron tayong mga goals na kailangan ma-meet, which is satisfying the customer, yung may experience nila yung fun, na may enjoy nila yung system na ginagamit nila. Siyempre, entertaining, informative or helpful yung system na ginagamit nila. Motivating, for example, when searching for information on the internet, if the user receives lack of information when searching, then I don't think mas ma-motivate pa sila mag-search for more. And then, as syempre, aesthetic, motivate, na motivating na, and enhancing sociability. So, design metrics of the user experience, usability, easy to use and efficiency, aesthetic, sensorial experience generated by the look and feel of the interface and the extent to which the experience matches individual preference and goals. Symbolism, meaning and associations elicited by a system, as proposed to aesthetic, which can be visceral. Symbolism required cognitive processing. The individual recognized a symbol and associated a meaning to it. So may sample yan mamaya. Design principles. Generalized abstraction for thinking about different aspects of design. To do's and don'ts of interaction design. What to provide and what not to provide at the interface. Derived from a mixed theory-based knowledge, experience, and common sense. So, meron siyang 5 part, which is visibility, feedback, constraints, mapping, consistency, and affordance. On the visibility, syempre, this is a control panel. Wala, hindi ko nalagay yung example, pero merong ano yun dito, panel ng isang elevator. Di ba pag, wait lang mama, maglalagay na ako ng example picture. Okay. So, example, yung elevator na panel. So, meron tayong nakikita minsan sa elevator natin. I think every one of us naman siguro na experience yung meron lang siyang button na dalawa lang, yung arrow up at saka yung arrow down. Tapos meron dyan sa gilid na minsan meron silang elevator operator na naglalagay ng card or nung access card para magamit mismo ng operator yung elevator. So, control panel ng elevator, how does it work? So, push a button for a floor you want, which is kung anong floor level, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. And then, if nag-click ka, nothing happens. So, push any other buttons. Mag-click ka ng open elevator door or no-notify ka ng alarm. And then, hindi mo naman magagamit yung key na nasa ilalim ng ng notify for the security kasi wala ka namang susi. Still, nothing works. What do you need to do? So, it is not visible as what to do. Kasi walang information na nakikita or hindi complete yung details na nakikita natin within the panel. Okay, so another example, which is under pa rin sa visibility, you need to insert your room card in the slot by the button to get to the elevator to work. Yan yung sinasabi ko na gumagamit minsan or within the hotels, binibigyan tayo ng access card sa ating rooms, which is applicable din minsan sa mga elevator natin na ginagamit para exclusive and for, I think this is for security purposes then. So, how would you make this action more visible? Make the card reader more obvious. Either lagay mo siya sa mas obvious na part ng panel. Provide an auditory message that says what to do. Meron tayong nakikita sa elevator, meron silang like, let's just say 6 to 7 inch screen that projects instruction. Provide a big label next to the card reader that flashes when someone enters. Meron din tayo nakikitang ganyan. Make relevant part visible. Within the access card na linalagyan natin ng card, minsan hina-highlight nila yung insertion part para mas makita natin na as user yung paglalagyan natin ng card and make what has to be done obvious. So, transparency, useful feedback, easy to understand, intuitive to use, clear and easy to follow instruction, appropriate help, online help, context-sensitive guidance of how to proceed when stuck. Yung sa transparency naman na part, if ever yung user is, let's just say, nagka-problema sa system or sa device na kanyang binili, tapos nagpro-provide lang si seller or si company ng user manual online. So the manual should be easy to understand. Okay? So clear and easy to follow instruction. So to make it transparent or to make it clear to easy to follow instruction, they will have to use images and shapes like arrows or kung ano mang ginagamit nila for the user to let's just say troubleshoot their device. Okay, so on the feedback, sending information back to the user about what has been done. Includes sound, highlight, animation, and combination of this. So example, when screen button click on provide sound and red highlighted feedback. So for example, may image natin, meron tayong dalawang button. Okay? So kung i-click natin yung unang previous button, it will display click na word. Okay? So next naman, yung sa ilalim, if meron tayong button na previous, once clicked, it will be highlighted as red. Okay? So constraints. Restricting the possible action that can be performed help prevent user from selecting incorrect options. So there are three main types: physical, cultural, and logical. Physical constraints refers to the way physical object restricts the movement of things. How many ways? Okay, so for example, how many ways can you insert a CD or DVD into a computer? Okay, so you will need syempre, CD-ROM para maka-insert ka ng CD and DVD. And then, I think yung mga new na CD-ROM ngayon, there's no need na to click for any buttons to release a tray na nag-accept ng CD. Ngayon ata, ilalagay mo lang mismo. So, yung physical constraints doon is, let's just say, yung linalagay lang mismo, hindi pinipilit ni user na maglagay ng CD pero hindi ina-accept ni CD-ROM kasi sa loob nun meron ng CD. Okay? So, nakalimutan niyang i-eject yung nilagay niya dati. So, hindi talaga mag-accept si system or si device niya ng CD. So, how does it differ from insertion into a floppy disk into a computer? Kasi hindi ako maka-explain about floppy disk kasi I've never experienced using floppy disk. Okay, so affordance refers to an attribute of an object that allows people to know how to use it. Example, mouse button invites pushing, a door handles affords pulling. Okay, syempre sa mouse natin meron tayong clicking na yung function niya is clicking and then scrolling. Norman, Mr. Norman, which is this is a reference from 1988, used the term to discuss design of everyday objects. Okay, so learned conventions of arbitrary mapping between actions and effects at the interface. Some mapping are better than the objects. Most popularized in interaction design to discuss how to design interface objects. Example, so within the website, let's just say, yung sa chat natin sa Facebook, meron tayong makikita, this is a PC version meron tayong nakikita na scroll bar sa gilid. So yung work ni scroll bar, syempre, moving up and moving down. And then, yung sa desktop natin, meron tayong mga icon. So ang interaction design for icon is for clicking. Syempre, i-click natin yung icon. Okay, so logical constraint exploits people everyday common sense reasoning about the way the world works. Okay, so where do you plug the mouse? Within the picture, I think this is a PS2 port. Where do you plug the mouse? Where do you plug the keyboard? Kasi dati meron tayong PS2 na port for mouse and keyboard. So the question is, top or bottom ba ilalagay yung mouse or yung keyboard? Do the color-coded icons help? Yung nasa ilalim, ito, yung color-coded. So, ganito in-explain how to design them more logically. So, A, provides a direct adjacent mapping between icon and connector. So as you can see, sa may sample A natin, sa itaas, yung color green, it has a mouse icon. So that just mean nga, yung ilalagay mo dito sa PS2 na to is for mouse only. And then, yung nasa ilalim, syempre, meron siyang icon na keyboard, ilalagay mo dito is PS2 for keyboard. Okay? So, another example, provides color coding to associate the connectors with the label. So, sa PS2, pinalibutan niya ng color, which is green, at saka yung pula. And then, sa ilalim, nilagyan niya ng legend. Okay? Na yung green para sa mouse, and then yung pula para sa keyboard. This is for the user para mas malaman niya kung saan ilalagay yung mouse at saka yung keyboard na PS2 port. And then, dito, example, makikita natin dito sa slides na nasa gilid. This is a illogical way, I think, for me, of putting up slides para easy to access for the user. And then, syempre, nasa gilid yung design layout or yung slide layout. And nasa itaas yung menu. Okay. So, cultural constraints. Learned arbitrary conventions like read triangles for warning can be universal or cultural specific. Siyempre, pag I think general naman na siguro, pag nakakita ka ng triangle, tapos color red pa, it will serve as warning. Mainly nakikita natin yung mga ganito as road signs for us to show warning na ahead, let's just say ahead curves siya or under construction yung daan. And then mapping, relationship between control and their movements and the results in the world. So as you can see, dito sa may sa sample, dito ako actually mas na-frustrate kasi meron tayong 4 na burner. And then, yung knobs nila for activation ng apoy is nandito sa taas. Okay, so paano mo malalaman if ganito yung burner na i-on mo? Okay, so if bago ka palang gumamit nito ng ganitong specific na burner, so syempre if new ka pa lang sa ganito, iti-test mo to lahat para malaman mo kung ano ang knob A, which is ito, if para ba siya dito sa upper right or sa lower right. So in a way medyo frustrating yung ganitong design, especially if yung meron kang guest na i-invite sa bahay nyo tapos naka-encounter din siya ng ganitong setup ng burner, then magta-try siya. So hindi talaga convenient yung ganitong placing ng setup. Okay, so consistency. Design interface to have similar operations and use similar elements for similar tasks. Okay, so for example, always use control key plus first initial of the command for an operation. So syempre, as Windows user, kasi I think yung sa Mac command yung yung control nila sa Windows is command. So control plus C, this will be a copy the text or copy the image files. Control S, saving files. Control O, opening files, like for example sa Word, mag-open ka ng Word application. Windows R, this is for to open the run application ng Windows. So main benefits is consistent interface are easier to learn and use. Internal and external consistency. Internal consistency, designing operations to behave the same within the application. So difficult to achieve with complex interface. While external consistency, designing operations interfaces to be the same across application and devices. Very rarely the case based on designer preference, brand identity. So ito yung example nung keypad number layout. A, case of external consistency. Okay? So nasa phone, example is phone, remote control. Ganito yung design nila ng number key or ng number pad. Okay? And then sa may B naman, calculators, computer keypads, ganito yung sample nila or design ng kanilang keypad number layout. Usability principles, similar to design principles except more perspective, used mainly as the basis for evaluating systems and provides a framework for heuristic evaluations. Okay, so amo lang to, ma'am. Any question?
Okay, so thank you. Okay, any question, class? So I actually give an instruction to please prepare one question each of you to for me also to evaluate if you really listen to the lecture.
Ako ang ma-ask, ma'am?
Hindi. Classmate mo.
Okay.
Okay, ano ta, isa-isa? Okay, so actually the presentation or the report is concise, no? Maano siya, nakasummarize, no? Mas okay siya kaysa sa actually si sir nag-avoid sa wordiness, no? Hindi masyado lot of words and he added examples, visuals. So class, any question? May nahawidan man kamo sa report? Miss Maika? Actually, class, bag-o ni siya, no? Si Ma'am Maika, no? So, in our previous lessons, I think wala siya.
Hi, ma'am. Good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to our class, MCS 535.
Yes. Question ko, ma'am, kay Sir Gian is, what is the difference sa layout sa keyboard to kag sa calculator? Anong advantage? Kaya nga, nagbalis ka danay sila, sir.
Okay, ma'am. So, masabat ko, ma'am?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so, ay share ko lang liwat, mama. Okay, so, ari ma'am, ang sa may control naton, bali, kag sa phone, nasanay na kita nga ang keypad naton, syempre, I think mostly naman sa aton siguro nakaabot sa keypad nga cellphone. So, nakita man naton, ma'am, nga sa keypad naton nga cellphone is ari na di ang syempre 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 0 ang sa tunga and then mayroon na diri asterisk or number sign. Bali amo na, ma'am, ang nakasanayan nila nga gamiton for phones and remote controls. For example, and then sa may Android naton nga phones, actually open up kita sa aton nga keyboard, makita na naton ang keyboard naton sa phone naton nga Android or iPhones nga ang pag-layout nila is keyboard based na nga nakaraya na siya bala, hindi na siya pareho sini. Pero may ara gyapon siya, ma'am, option if nakasanayan mo ni siya, there is still an option sa Android to have this type of layout. Okay? And then sa may calculator, ma'am, nakita mo ang 0 dire sa may lower left corner, and then nag-start siya sa 1, 2, 3 hasta sa 9. I think that is for computation part, ma'am. Kay do may nakapamangkot ko nagsad to sa isa ka accountant na mas preferred nila ang amo ni siya nga layout sang keyboard kay mas ang 0 nga part which is amo ni siya ang pinakadamo nila permigid ginatumbok kuno permi nila na gina-click. Yes, Sir Carillo.
Okay.
Sir Carillo, yes.
Yes,
Naka-raise
sir.
ka,
Go
sir.
ahead.
Next question ako, sir. Pagkatapos mo mag-explain, next naman.
Okay. Okay, sige, sir.
Okay,
So, mamay ka, nasabat ko, mamay mo kumangkot, ma'am.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
okay, next question.
Next question, sir. Okay. Ito yung question ko, sir. What are the basic concept of software designer to create design that will be fit for particular culture or society? Yun lang, sir.
You mean yung general, sir?
Yes, yung answer, sir, in general term.
Pwede mo ma-repeat ulit, sir, yung question?
Okay, sir. Ulitin ko, sir. What are the basic concept of software designer to create design that will be fit for particular culture or society?
Okay, so thank you, sir. I think kasi ako nagde-develop din ako, sir, ng mostly web ako. And then ngayon nagda-double na rin ako sa Android on machine learning. I think, sir, for me as a developer, nagre-research po muna ako kung ano yung base or yung existing na design ngayon. And then I will make prototypes. After nung pag-create ko ng prototypes, i-narrow down ko sila kung saan yung mas functional. Like for example, yung okay, so ito, sa example na to, sir. So for example, ito, yung prototype ko na una, ganito yung design. Okay? And then, yung pangalawa kong design is ganito. So for me, mas okay yung A kasi nandyan na sa gilid mismo ni PS2 port. And then, mouse and keyboard. And yung ganito kasi po, sir, medyo ano pa siya, I think para sa akin hindi siya better yung pag-design kasi yung dito sa ilalim, pwedeng matakpan like mga cables and such kasi yung dito mas malapit sa bilog, mas better. Okay, so nasagot ko, sir. I mean yung explanation ko mas ano ba?
Okay, sir.
Can I add up?
Okay, thank you.
Can I add up? Okay, so I think Sir Carillo wanted to know, so for example, if you want to design something out of culture, right?
Mhm.
So I think one example is that when I was in Korea, culturally, sa ila, in their elevator, I forgot, no? They don't put 14 or 13 na floor. Culturally, it is because bad na kuno nga floor or number. Yes. So in deep in deep in their culture that they don't want to, that they avoid that number. So even in their elevator, they don't include that number. So I think that is best. That is one of the example in cultural, considering the culture in design. Okay, we can think of something about culture later on sa design pagid naton. That is also important when we think of specific, halimbawa, we are used to that Ilonggo, may culture kita yang lain nga aton. So what if we are working on different project international, we must know their culture. Especially if we have a freelance project working in abroad, say for example. So those little things naghambal kita nga culture that will not affect. Halimbawa, use of color. Okay? So maybe culturally okay sa aton ang magamit sang color nga ina, but with them lain ang ila pag-interpret sang color nga ina. Or maybe some of the symbols have different interpretation sa ila yang culture kag sa aton lain man. So I think that is we need to know no before we develop. Okay? I think Sir Carillo, did I
Thank you,
answer
ma'am.
your
Okay, ma'am.
your
Thank you.
question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes. Okay, okay. Okay, so is there another question? So I will give points to those who are asking questions. Okay, so I will list down. Okay, so some more question? So can I wrap up, Sir Gian? So actually, thank you very much for the very substantial report or presentation, sir. I have some additional input. Actually, so design rules ni Sir Kaina, no? It is focused on UX. So, or user experience and usability. So, sa user experience, this is more focused on, dahil lang gid, I got some image to show. Nakita nun class, nga sa akon di siya visible mo. Visible sa inyo.
Ga visible siya ma'am kisa tapos may kisa ganda black screen man siya.
Okay. Ka-block siya, no? Anyway, kung i-ano ko siya gali, kung i-minimize, naga-block siya. Okay, let's not minimize na lang. Okay, so UX versus usability. So actually, ginakuha ko ni Kaina sa report ni Sir, no? Kung ano gid ang point niya. Okay, because of course, nowadays, not only we are going to hire a developer, it is also important to have the UI UX designer, di ba? Kang una do wala naton siya gina, we are not considering the UI UX designer or we don't consider to get this UI UX, no, because we think that the developer itself or software developer or programmer can do the both. But in HCI, it emphasize, no, emphasize siya that design is different, no. When we talk about if we want to develop an interactive system, this expertise is not included or rare lang ka makakita class that a programmer also has skills to design, no, like mag-graphics pa siya nga kag madala within the scope of his or her work. So if not, your developer would ask, no, dapat may ara ka UI UX, no. And then of course, usability and user experience is a different thing. Okay, so when we say usability, because in the report it was emphasized as well. So how effective, how efficient, how learnable it is, how it prevents error, and how it is easy to memorize. Okay, so and then user experience is more focused on the satisfaction, enjoyment, pleasure, fun, and value of the user. So if we design, we have to at least satisfy this user experience and usability. Okay? So where usability is a narrow and focus, UX is a broad and holistic, no? So kung matapos mo na ning usability nimo, maybe we can add value on the user experience, or this two could go both no together nga ara makita naton sa imong design. Okay? So I think this can summarize no of the report. So but if you are going to deepen and be knowledgeable on the terms used and ano sa libro ka mo class magkuha sang data, then you will understand sang mga design rules, ano pa to kay na principles, and other factors that we need to consider when we design. Okay? So I hope you learn something from the report, and thank you very much to our reporter and for throwing the questions as well. So for the next reporter and for the class, you have to prepare questions. So this is one way for me to know if you are listening, no? Bisan ka pangapi ka mo that class, you have to think. You just don't you use your ear to listen and to analyze, to think as well. Hindi lang ka bumamate, okay? Kaya kung matapos klase, wala ka mo inintindihan. Okay? So again, thank you very much. Let's proceed with the next reporter. Sino gani? Si
Ako, ma'am.
Bon.
Ako daw.
Okay. Yes, you may share your PowerPoint.
Kita niyo na, Doc?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. So, today, I'm going to discuss about the implementation support. So, how does HCI affect of the programmer? So, obviously, HCI affects the design and therefore what is produced. So, however, the nature of user interfaces can make certain aspects of programming an interactive application more difficult than, or at least, different from other kinds of coding. So, HCI impacts how the design is put together. So, it also advances in coding have elevated programming such as the hardware specific. So ang hardware specific, which means nga interact ang interaction of technique. So there's three types of layers of development tools: the windowing systems, the interaction toolkits, the user interface management system. So ang windowing systems, amo na siya mga windows ta. The interaction toolkits, ang just like in Java, ang mga out, and the user interface management system na siya. So here are the elements of windowing system. So ang first is the device independence. So the programming the abstract terminal device drivers, image models for output and partially input. So the examples are the pixels, the PostScript in Mac OS, the graphical kernel system or the JKS, and the programmer's hierarchical interface to graphics. So also, it is the resource sharing, so achieving simultaneity of user tasks, Windows system support, independent process, and the isolation of individual applications. So the first important feature of windowing system is its ability to provide programmer independence from the specifics of the hardware devices. So a typical workstation involves some visual display screen, ang keyboard, ang mga pointing device, or ang ga-interact sa mga devices naton nga ga-interact sa aton nga software like keyboard and mouse. So, mga varieties ng hardware device nga ni can be used in an interactive system. So, they are all different in terms of data, in how they communicate, and how they command that are used to instruct them. So, it depends on the users. So, it is imperative to be able to program an application that will run on a wide range of devices. So to do this, the programmer wants to direct commands to an abstract terminal that which understands more generic language and can be translated to the language of many of the specific devices. So besides making the programming task easier, the abstract terminal makes portability of application programs possible. Only one translation program or device driver needs to be written for a particular hardware device, and then application program can access it. So in a given windowing system, it has a fixed generic language for abstract terminal. Ang ginatawag naton siyang imaging model. So ang imaging model, it is sufficient nga maka-describe siya in every arbitrary images. So for efficiency reasons, specific primitive are used to handle text images, either as specific pixel images or more generic font definitions. So in a device independence nga term, so amo na siyang ang gin-explain ko kanina, ang mga mouse naton, trackpad, joystick, ang keyboard layouts, and the screen resolution. So in a resource sharing, ang Windows system as a resource sharing, so many applications siya, one screen, one keyboard, one mouse, and one pair of eyes, one set of fingers. So ang resource sharing siya, it is because nga ginagamit naton is isa lang ka mouse. So one mouse, pwede siya ka-interact in many application. One keyboard, pwede man siya maka-interact in many application. And one screen, pwede siya maka-pop up many windows. So may window 1 kadibi-abi, window 2, so multiple windows. So one pair of eyes sa isa ka user, may one pair of eyes siya nga makalantaw sa imong hardware or the screen, and one set of fingers to interact sa imong keyboard para maka-type sa imong applications. So the roles of windowing system. So independence, it is from the specifics of programming separate hardware devices, and management of multiple independent but simultaneously active devices. So in an abstract terminal, ang ga-behave siya in independent process, and the windowing system will coordinate the control of the concurrent process. So to ease the programming task again, this coordination of simultaneously, so ang active process, ari siya, diri nga part. So the active process can be factored out as the individual applications. So they can be programmed as if they were operate in isolation. So the Windows system must also provide a means of displaying the separate application, and this is accomplished by dedicating a region of the display screen to each active abstract terminal. So the coordination task then involves resolving display conflict when the visible screen regions of two abstract terminal. So amo ni siya. So ang imong hardware, ang mga hardware mo, and then makato siya sa device independence in multiple applying the Windows system, multiple application, gamit siya or maka-access siya in multiple application program. So the architecture of windowing system. So there are three possible software architectures. So all assumed device drivers are separate, differ in how multiple application management is implemented. So let's assume that in every hardware you have, may separated siya nga device driver. So each application, first is each application manages all processes. So everyone worries about synchronization. It reduces portability of application and can be efficient for low-end devices. So the first option is to implement the replicate the management of multiple processes within each of the separate application. So next is the management role. So first gali is it may be used for dedicated devices. And the early Mac and MS Windows assumed to be cooperative apps. So in second, the management role within kernel of the operating system. So the application tied to the operating system. So it is the implement of management role. So centralizing the management task by freeing it from the individual application. So the last or the third option provides the most portability as the management function is written as a separate application in its own right and so can provide an interface to other application programs that is generic across the operating system. So example is the X Windows. So here is an example of the ang third nga software ang software application which is the client server architecture. So ano siya ang hardware from hardware device driver, mga device driver nila nga ang sa hardware, and then the resource manager ang for the interaction dayon ang mga application nga ginagamit sa users. So if we on this an example, so Windows system, virtual terminals, so each app its own PC. So ang device drivers for example, is your monitor and then your keyboard. So ginagamit nato ni siya for ang interaction between the application and then sa resource manager. Ang in every application ginakuha niya nga abstract terminal para dasig ang pag-access. So here are the types of Windows layout. So the tiled or the space shared, so web sidebars, expanding widgets. So ang example sinisang tiled is ang taskbar sa may sa aton nga menu when we open it. So this is example of the tiled. So ang single app or the time shared ang example sini is makita ta sa phone or ang mga earlier versions ng Windows, that is your tiled. So ang overlapping, so it is most common for PC. So ang overlapping is ang mag-open ka sa mga multiple windows. That's an example of overlapping. So the X Windows architecture. So a separate client, so the window manager, so enforces policies to resolve conflicting input and output. So si Windows Manager, siya na ang manage or naga-resolve sa conflict nga input and output nga request from your hardwares. So, for example, a window manager would decide how the user can change the focus of his input from one application to another. So, another example is Ang policy is whether visible screen images of client windows can overlap or must be non-overlapping. So, siya ni ang manage if ang in terms of, for example, Abi, in input-output, if there's a conflict or multiple windows, so siya ang resolve. So in X Windows architecture, the pixel imaging model with some pointing mechanism and the X protocols defines server-client communication. So in a separate window manager, client enforces policies for input and output. How to change input focus. So ang tiled versus overlapping windows and the interclient data transfer. So in interclient data transfer, nag-provide siya conventions for policy issues that not includes sa X Windows nga architecture. So in programming application read evaluation, so we have one type is the read evaluation loop. So in a read evaluation loop, so this is your logical flow. Kaga kung i-convert mo ang logical flow into code, this amo ni siya ang iyang pseudocode. So as far as the server is concerned, the only important of the event is the client to which it must be directed. So the client application is programmed to read any event passed to it and determine all the application-specific behavior that results as a response to it. So the logical flow of the client application is indicated in the most left box. So the code is the read of the read evaluation loop would look like the following. So muna siya. So next is the notification based. So the other programming paradigm is the notification based, in which the main control loop for event processing does not reside within the application. So, ari siya. Ang example of the notification based ang logical flow niya. So, instead of centralized notifier receives event from the Windows system and filters them in the application program in a way that declared by the program. The application program informs the notifier. So, ari siya, ang application program, ma-inform siya sa notifier. So, i-read sa notifier ang input ni application. Then, it produces a callback before turning the control over to the notifier. So when the notifier receives the event from the Windows system, it sees if that event was identified by application program, and if so, passes the event and control over the callback procedure that was registered for the event. After processing, the callback procedures return to the control to the notifier of the event, and either telling it is continue to receiving events or requesting for termination. So ang application nga so the application program mahatag siya sa input or pakadto kay notifier, then notifier ma-read niya na sang input, and then ma-send siya sa appropriate callback pakadto kay application, and then kay application mahatag siya response if padayunon ang mag-receive sang event or ma-stop na siya. So kung padayunon, kung per sabihin no, So, mabalik naman siya ma-read input and then makadto sa process, balik-balik, looping. So, kung ma-end siya or ma-end sa nga request or i-terminate niya na ang request, so, amo na pag-end sang imo nga application. So, the system's style affects the interfaces. So, ang style sang imo nga system, ga-affect man sa design or sa interface sang imo nga application. So, the model dialog box, so it is possible to use notification-based code to produce a preemptive interface dialog such as model dialog box. So, but much more difficult than with an event loop-based system. Similarly, it is possible to write event loop-based code which is not preemptive, but again, it is difficult to do so. So, ang model dialog box, ang hapos siya in event looping, but budlay siya in notifications. So, in a non-model dialog box, budlay siya in event looping, but easy siya sa notification. So, if you don't explicitly decide what is the behavior you want or you specify it unclearly, then it is like that the resulting system will simply run with the grain, which are not make a good interface. So, ang grain ginatawag nila is ang tendency to push towards a certain kinds of interfaces. So, in using toolkits, there's an interaction object which is ang input and output and intrinsically linked. So, for example, ang sa WIMP ang WIMP is Windows icons, menus, and pointing. Ang user's perspective is ang paano mag-behave ang input kag output mo. So, for example, ang button. So, paano mo siya i-combine sa interaction sa button na object? For example, ang Java. So, paano mo siya i-combine sa button nga object? As the user moves the mouse, the cursor over the button, it changes to the finger to suggest that the user can push it. So, for example, in your program, kung mag-move ang imo nga mouse sa button, transfer ang gahimo, imbes nga arrow nga cursor, nagahimo siya hand nga cursor, naga-indicate nga ang button nga na, or ang icon, ang button na rather, is pwede mo siya clickable siya nga button or ang icon. So, for example, click mo. So, once it is clicked, ang button naga-highlight or naga-itom. Amo na siya. And then, for example, once it is released, gabalik siya sa move nga part or pareho siya sa previously nga wala siya ga-highlight. And then, once you move away ang imo nga cursor, balik siya sa original yang form as an arrow. So, toolkits provide this level of abstraction. So, programming with interaction objects or techniques, widgets, and gadgets. So, ang mga toolkits like are widgets, ang mga gadgets muna siya. So, promote consistency and generalizability. So, through similar look and feel. So, it is amenable to object-oriented program. So, it is applicable for the object-oriented nga mga programming, just like ang Java. So, there are two features of interaction objects and toolkits. So, first is they depend on being able to define a class of interaction objects which can then be invoked or instantiated many times within one application with only minor modifications to each instance. So second is the building complex interaction objects is made easier by building up the definition based on existing simpler interaction objects. So these notions is the instantiation and the inheritance. So this is the instantiation and the second feature is the inheritance. So these are the cornerstones of object-oriented programming. So classes are defined as templates for interaction objects. When an interaction object is created, it is declared as an instance of some predefined class. So on classes in Java programming, it is defined as templates nga maka-interact ang mga object or the interaction of objects. So maka-interact ang user sa objects. So once the interaction object is created, it is already a predefined class. So here are the examples in the interfaces in Java. So the Java toolkit, which is the out, Java classes for buttons, menus, and like panels. So notification based is the out 1.0 and the out 1.1. So the swing toolkit, which is built on top of the out or the higher level features, and it uses MVC architecture. So makita nyo na siya later. So the user interface management system or the UIMS, it adds another level above toolkits. So toolkits that are too difficult for non-programmers. So concerns of UIMS is the conceptual architecture and the implementation technique and the support infrastructure. So in the conceptual architecture, it is for the structure of an interactive system which concentrates on a separate between application, semantics, and presentations. So the implementation techniques naman niya, it is a separated application and the presentation for preserving an intended connection between them. So the support infrastructure naman niya, it is for managing, implementing, and evaluating of a runtime interactive environment. So the non-UIMS terms is the UI development system. When you application that is developed in UI. So on UI development environment is your Visual Basic. So UIMS as a conceptual architecture. So separation between the application, semantics, and the presentation. So improve. So the UIMS needs to improve its portability that can run in different systems. So runs in different systems, mean to say maka-run siya in a different OS. The reusability, components reuse, cutting costs. The multiple interfaces, which is the accessing same functionality, and the customizability by the designer and the user. So it must be easy to customize. So there are three major components of an interactive system. First is the application, the view of application semantics that is provided as the interface. So, ang application ta, the presentation, the component, which responsible for the appearance of the interface, including what output and input is available to the user. So, ang amo na siyang UI ta. Dialogue control, the component which regulates the communication between the presentation and the application. So, ang UIMS tradition, there are interface layers or the logical components. First is the linguistic, which is the lexical, syntactic, and semantic. The SAHIM, which is ang presentation, dialogue control, and then the application. So there's an in between niya, ang instead of direct, direct interaction ang presentation to application, so it must be anay sakay dialogue control ang maagi. So ang ari, ang square nga ni, this is what you call switch or ang bypass para nga magdasig ang pag-communicate ni application kag ni presentation. So another logical component is the arc or the slinky. So the SAHI model, so users ang sa presentation and then dialogue control and then ang functionality or the application interface, then ang application nga mismo. So from application to presentation, ang dira na da ang switch. So ang switch ang amo na siyang dasig ang pag-feedback sa pag-interact ni user pakadto sa application. So though pan siya bali though ano ni gani ang though output nga ginapagwa ni application. So, conceptual versus implementation. So, SAHIM arose out of the implementation experience. But principal contribution is conceptual or the concepts part of normal or the UI language. Because SAHIM, we think differently. So, example of SAHIM is the lower box or the switch that's needed for implementation but not in a conceptual form. So, the semantic feedback. So, there are different kinds of feedback. The lexical, syntactic, and the semantic. So, ang lexical, amo na siya, ang example is the movement of mouse. Ang syntactics, when you move your mouse, ga-highlight ang mga menu bars or ng mga buttons. And the semantic is the sum of the number changes. So the semantic feedback, often slower, use rapid lexical syntactic feedback. So, but may need rapid semantic feedback like freehand drawing or the highlight trash can or folder when file drag. So that is an example of a rapid semantic feedback. So, ang when you highlight the trash bin or ang folder, when you click and drag the folder, ang rapid, rapid output or rapid interaction. So that's the switch or the bypass. So ang switch provides from the application to the presentation, ang na siyang makita ta, ang output is the rapid semantic feedback. So, naga-response siya dayon. So, from application, it directs the communication between the application and presentation. But then, it regulated by the dialogue control. So, the monolithic versus components, the SAHIM has big components. Often easier to use smaller ones, especially if using object-oriented toolkits. So, ang Smalltalk use MVC model view controller. So MVC stands for model, view, and controller. So model, internal logical state of the component. View, how it is rendered on screen or paano siya gina-output sa screen. And the controller, ang process sang pag-input ng hardware or any ang interaction. So in MVC, for example, ang kwan siya, ang pipeline, so pasunod ang iyang nga ano na ganyan, nga flow. So first, mouse. So for example, mouse, ma-controller mo siya, kadto siya sa controller. So when you magsaksak abi ka mouse, so gina-process yung input, or for example, abi, when you click ang button, ma-process siya sa input, and then ang model, ang for example, when you open an application, so si mouse, i-move mo anay, then you double click it, ang ano na ganyan. So process siya, gina-process siya nga i-open ang application nga na, and then the model, which is ng logical state ng component, so paano na siya abi mag-open na. So that's ang sa model. So once nga model, makuha niya na abi, ma-calculate or ma-analyze niya kung paano niya i-open ang application nga na, ang application ma-open, ma-pop out sa mga computer, and then ay output niya sa screen or sa monitor ni user. So that is your MVC model. So MVC issues. So ang MVC there is an issue of MVC nga model. So MVC is a largely pipeline model. So pipeline model, which means nga pasunod siya. So input, first you must input, and then ma-control, then ma-model, ma-view, and then ma-output. So in graphical interface, input only has meaning in relation to output. So example, ang mouse click need to know what was clicked, and then the controller has to decide what to do with the click. So but view knows what is shown there. So in practice, controller talks to view. So in a separation, it is not complete. So the PAC model naman niya, PAC stands for presentation, abstraction, and control. So abstraction, ang logical state of component mo, ang presentation, ang ga-manage ng input and output, ang control ga-mediates component them. So in managing, it manages the hierarchy and multiple views. So control part of the PAC objects communicate. So PAC cleaner is in many ways, but MVC used more in practice. So for example, is the Java swing. So in Java swing, nabala ang ma-declare ka na kung ano na siya, that swing, that out, or ano. So then, ang i-declare mo kung anong himuon ka, ma-declare ka ka-button, and then anong himuon ka-button mo. So that's one of the examples ng MVC. So in the PAC naman niya, tingob. When you click, so sa control mismo, may ara siyang PAC mismo. So in a control nga layer, may ara na siya nga kinaiya nga presentation, may kinaiya na siya nga ano na ganyan, nga abstraction, and may kinaiya siya nga control. So PAC versus MVC. So here are the difference between PAC and MVC. PAC groups input and output together, whereas MVC separates them. The PAC provides an explicit component whose duty it is to see the abstraction and presentation are kept consistent with each other, whereas MVC does not assign this important task to any one component, leaving it to the programmer or the designer to determine where that chore resides. The PAC is not linked to any programming environment, though it is certainly conducive to an object-oriented approach. So the implementation of UIMS, first, so there are techniques for the dialogue controller. So first is the menu networks, which communicates between application and presentation, and it is model for menus and submenus. So menu networks for the menus and submenus. So the grammar notions, the dialogue between ang treated as a grammar of action and responses, and therefore described by means of formal context-free grammar notions. So in the declarative languages, it describes the correspondence between the application and the presentation because they are unable to describe effectively how information flows between the two. So in the graphical specification naman niya, it is the techniques on the dialogue on how kung paano gina-program in terms in graphically. So it depends on the programmer kung paano niya na gin-program ang graphical specifications. So the state transition diagrams, it is used for graphical means or expressing the dialogue, mga dialogue box. So the event languages, that is your mga event languages like in your in Java, and the constraints it is an connection between the independent information of the presentation and the application. So the graphical specification, so what it is, so the draw components on screen, so mga components mo sa screen, anong makita mo sa Windows, the set actions with scripts or links to the program. So if we open ang button niya na, anong scripting niya na, ano ang codes niya na, nga paano siya mag-highlight or paano na siya, ano ang iyang function. So in use, the raw programming most popular technique is the Visual Basic, the Dreamweaver, and the Flash. So local versus global. So hard to see the paths through system and focus on what can be seen on one screen. So in graphical specification, in summary, kung ano ang makita mo sa imo nga screen or ang imo nga windows. So the drift of dialogue control. So here are the types of dialogue control. So the internal control, ang example ta is the read evaluation loop, the external control, the independent application of presentation, and the presentation control is the graphical specification. So ang presentation control ang na siya ang sa screen mo, ang external control is your hardwares, and the internal control is ang imo nga mga codes. So in summary, so levels of programming support tools is the windowing system. It is the device independent, and it can multiple tasks. The paradigms of programming application is the read evaluation loop and the notification base. The toolkits are the programming interaction objects, and the UIMS is the conceptual architectures for separation and techniques for expressing the dialogue. So that's all for my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. So are you still with us? Ara pa ka mo class? Okay, who will
Yes, ma'am.
So daw lawig siya ka presentation. No? Anyway, thank you very much, Ma'am Deluson. So now the virtual floor is open for your question. May magkot class? Wala gid. Wala pa magkot? May naintindihan? Wala man. Okay, so coming from Miss Garcia.
Hello. Hello, ma'am. Good afternoon.
Yes, good
Ma'am,
afternoon.
what are the application of what applications that uses the client server model?
Example of application.
Computer application, ma'am, that uses the client server model.
Era sa atong report kaina. Wala na ito manog report. Okay, the question is,
Ayun po, ma'am.
okay,
wait lang.
example of computer application that uses client server model.
Ay, wait lang, ma'am.
You can answer this in a way na not so specific,
Okay.
in general
So-
lang, no? You can give example.
So, ang client-server architecture, ma'am, for example, abi, ma'am, ang when you open, for sabi, Skype, so ma-access ang client is, di ba, ang client, so interaction with ang UI or the interface. So, dara ka nga part nga client. So, ang application mo is ang ma-send ang request for the server, ang dira sa server mo, sa server ka Skype nga mag-interact or maka-access sa mga contacts mo. And then si server, ma-request ka, for example, for access ng ang Skype or for mag-contact ka abi sa imong nga friend, sa imong nga contact list. And then si Skype ma-response or ma-response siya nga, okay, pwede ka naka-access amo na siya, ma'am. So, ang iya nga application for a
Okay.
client server.
So, correct na, Ma'am Maika.
Kung email, ma'am, pwede siya sa ano.
Ang
Amo na.
client server, ma'am. Pwede siya, ma'am, sa email.
Okay.
Yes, so any application on the web is an example sang client server. So when we load a kind of web page, so application client server na siyang application gadaan. So there is an interaction between the client and the server. So that is, I think, an example of the client server model.
Okay, ma'am. Thank
Okay.
you.
So more questions or clarification, not question or suggestion. Yes, Dropbox desktop up. Yes, basta naga-interact kita. No, good afternoon, ma'am. May question ako about sa Uims. And another level about above toolkits. Toolkits too difficult for non-programmers. What example, ma'am, of toolkit? Thank you. Libang gina-order ni ma'am Alvin Kula. So, ang question, there is a question, Ma'am Deluso, no? So, galibog ang ulo niya about UIMS. So, ano kuno ang
Okay.
example sini nga toolkit?
Ang sa toolkits, ma'am, for example, abi, ma'am, ang sa Java programming, no? So, ang mga out na naton, ang first abi mga Java swing, ang kung man-notice mo, ma'am, in NetBeans abi, ma'am, no? So, may feature da siya nga pwede ka maka-click ang drag and drop sa mga
Yes.
panels, mga buttons. So, ang example of toolkits are those ang mga buttons, ang mga ano na gani ang panels, those are example, ma'am.
Okay, so basically, like this is an example like GDK.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Doc.
Java SDK, like Android Studio, in which this is kind of ano kay tawag sini? Interface or user interface management system nga dira ikaw maka-work, maka-code ka,
Ah.
maka-run ka sang code mo. So pwede kita makahambal nga this is also like NetBeans. It is also a toolkit nga ara dira within sa imong compiler. Okay? So like kung nag-develop ka sang mobile phone, sa mobile phone, sang mobile programs like your Android Studio, your emulator, other toolkits that built in tira sa platform nga ginagamit mo. So okay na kita, Ma'am Dayan? Naintindihan? Okay, another question. Hello, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. What are the special feature of X Windows architecture? Actually, hindi ko, ano ning X, hindi ko ano masyado sa X Windows.
Bali, ang X Windows na siya, ma'am. Balik, N number of Windows, per sabi Windows 95, Windows, ano mo na.
What are the special feature? Okay. So, okay. So, someone is raising his hand. So, Sir Carillo, yes, you may ask your question.
Question ka, ma'am. What are the common barrier between user and programmer that will affect the implementation? Yun lang,
Common
ma'am.
barrier of the programmer and designer?
User,
User.
and
User
that will
and
affect the implementation. What
okay,
are the common
user.
barrier between user and programmer that will
Okay.
affect the implementation?
Sige,
Yun lang,
ni
ma'am. Question ko.
si Ma'am Anay Jo. Ma'am Jo, Anay, kaya mo na, mama.
Ano ganito, di ba?
Anong kuno ang common
Uli.
barrier sa implementation between user and programmer? Ano usual naton nga ma-encounter kung mag-implement kita between user and programmer? Tay nagaintindihan may bala sila nga duwa?
So, siguro, ma'am, in my opinion, ma'am, no, ang the functionality and the feature. So, ang user is mausar siya sang ano na gani sang system. So, dapat ang what you call this? Ang user friendly or hapos gamiton ang system sa user nga side. So for me ang common nga barrier is ang on how the ano ni gani panoga how the user mag maggamit or mag-usar sang interface and functionality. Siyempre, ang programmer man niya is ang ma-create or ma-develop. So, do feedback ka user nga, okay, dapat is, dapat, ano ni gani ang amuning obrahon mo para maging user-friendly, something like that.
Okay, may point. Anyway, so I will just add up, no? Siguro first, no, sa previous lecture ni Ma'am Tas, dapat may contract, no? It should be clear kung anong deliverables. Okay? So, dira na siya go conflict is ang ara na kamo sa finishing stage tapos lain pagali ang iyang gusto, no? So, there are barriers also sa like for example, kailain kita perspective ang user kung wala mo siya gin-include sa development. So for example, you are using Scrum, no? Scrum methodology in which in that development method, gina-include mo gid na iya ang user sa tanan mo nga task, no? And then may ara ka pa da nga at the end of the day or daily scrum, may ara ka da nga feedback nga ginalista, user feedback, and then obrahon mo na the next day, the following day. So if may case ang hindi na naton ginalista gid or hindi kita toro sa aton nga pag-design, may tendency nga may maano kita, no? May ma-miss kita. Okay? And una best, dapat clear sa aton ang deliverables. Also, we have to understand nga lain ang communication, ano tag ni? Ang aton niya kaintindi kita ya sang mga drawing or sa mga diagrams. But in typical person, hindi na sila kaintindi. So we have to present or represent our idea and our design in such a way nga maintindihan sang typical person or our user. Okay? And then may ara man kis ang of course, especially no sa amo ning wala may limitation kita sa face to face. Maybe we can include our user in sa aton nga ano tawag ni nga feedbacking every time, no? So para at least pagkatapos ma-develop ang system, good to go na siya. Hindi kita siling waterfall nga one shot. Kahit di nakadita gadiring na kita tapos wala feedback every time, hindi naton siya ma-include, no? So may tendency gina siya nga malikramo siya. Pero kung part sa sang development, gina-assist naton siya, clear sa aton ang deliverables both sides. Clear sa iya ang imo da nga design. Kay ti ginbutangan mo man da ka wireframe, gin layout mo man in such a way nga maintindihan niya, ginbutangan mo man sang ano kay tawag ni sang nalipat ako. Ano tawag? sang ang design ba lang ma-navigate niya. Okay? Nga wala ka pa nag-code. Kaya mo na siya maintindihan sa user, hindi niya na maintindihan ang drawing. So basically, one of the challenge is that clear ang deliverables. Okay? So base may tendency nga hindi mo ma-meet sa ulihi, that is one of the challenge, no? Kumbaga nagana lang pero hindi siya ma-satisfy. So i-include mo gid siya. So and communication is very important. And of course, amo na ma-satisfy naton siya especially on the usability and the user experience. So I think those things we need to put in mind when we do. Kay some of you, I think mga developer kamo eh. So, Sir RG is raising his hand. So, sir, maka-add on ka because you are also a programmer. So, what example of misunderstanding or nagapadugay sa development between amo na bala ang issue sa user? Like for example, sa aton da nga enrollment system. So Sir RJ, ikaw abidugang sa amon ideya.
About sa enrollment system, I think ang input sa sa involved ng stakeholder.
Yes, oo.
Na makabulig, makatag sa feedback para mas makita kung din pagidang ang need mo improve kag mas maging efficient pa sa. Kaya naman ang common man niya, no? Like example, may man yung mga enrollment system na namin ma'am sa registration or enrollment o pre-enrollment.
Ang bag-o niya subong mga pre-enrollment kag even grading, sir. Oo. Ang common mo nga mga ano bala mga like for example, mag-deploy ka na pero amo na syempre meeting with stakeholders tayon liwat
Yes,
naman.
Ang number one niya nga problem encounter ay ang time. Tama ka gamay. So wala sa man makuha ang proper ng feedback sa sa involved na stakeholder na may uses na. So tungod sa time nga limitado. So napadali ay lang. So pag deploy na dara na makita ang problema. So along the way dara na sa ma-improve sa next naman yan. No? So mula na first na deployment hindi man satisfied ang customer kasi may mga lapses pa kailangan i-improve. So time ang number one yan once na nag-decide yan ma-implement ni kamay na lang ang time pag implement siya.
Yes.
Example kay pag pandemic wala sa ma-force nga mo ning may ma-online ang pre-enrollment. So lipot lang ang time so hindi gawa mo lang tapos yung pictures pwede lang ma-serve muna na sa nahatag.
Yes, I think time constraint as well, no? May comment ka
Yes, ma'am.
kakas ulo ka client. Yes. Kaya kung hindi na sa paggamit, pag launch mo be, or first pa lang ipa-test mo sa iya, total medyo satisfied na siya. Okay, so kung i-launch mo na, dira na makita, no? May first launch mo or mga beta test ka. Dira na makita pagid ang kung ano pagid gusto niya. Sa una niyo pa lang agreement, hindi okay na. Amo ni ang requirements niya. Tapos pag istorya niyo maliwat, lain naman ang iya nga ano. So insakto na kakas ulo ka client. So dira nagadugay. Okay lang so seldom maka-encounter ka sang client nga giplastaran mo okay na dayon. Okay? So basically hindi gid man kita maka-satisfy dayon. That's why may method nga prototyping nga as tama satisfy siya. Okay? But with the cost and the time, may timeline or time constraint. So amo lang na kisa. We have to bear with our client until nga ma-okay siya. Pag demo mo sa software, pagkakita niya damo naman need niya. Yes, natural. It is really normal, even you. Pagkita mo daw, may gusto ko pang improvement. But of course, if that is a project, kag need na, may ano na siya. That's why, may ginatawag nga maintenance, may ara pa nga for further improvement. No? Kung wala na within the scope of the contract, pwede mo man na ihambal nga hindi na within the contract, no? Kung dako gid bala ang gusto niya pa ipakayo nga not within. So pwede ta man na mahambal nga that incur another expense kung wala gid siya magpa-add saya sang module nga isa. Okay, so hindi siya pwede, no? So meet halfway lang kamo para hindi kamo maglainay buot. Okay, so are there any additional comment? Thank you, Sir RJ. And question, may ara pa? Thank you, Sir Carillo, for that question.
Thank you, ma'am.
May pamangkot pa? Wala na. Wala na, hapon na. Ako kapang grocery sa kay sarado na. Anyway, I have something to show you. Oops, not raising my hand. Okay, so we have this example, no? Just a summary. Implementation, programming tools, platform, APIs, compilers, windowing system. So how programmers work simultaneously. Application can be opened simultaneously in computer. Lain-lain nga, pwede kita, that is also a support. Programming application control dialogues, Git bash, command prompt, Windows PowerShell, and others. Interaction, toolkits, like, of course, pwede kita sang mga wireframes naton, Scrum method, GitHub. So, pwede na siya naton magamit. Kay halimbawa, we're working with different tawag ni? Programmer. So, pwede man kita ka-work remotely. User Interface Management System, SDK, Android Studio, and other toolkits. Okay, amo na siya ang example. So, kay damo-damo to kay na ang report. So, I hope you understand or you get something out of this report. So, isipon lang naton class nga ang implementation support is more focused on ang support para sa mga programmer, no? Of course, para paano nila ma-implement ang design nga maging successful siya. Kaya nowadays, there are many ways, no? We can use object-oriented programming, may mga objects na, may mga toolkits na, or we can use, halimbawa, if we are developing a website, may mga template na, may mga platforms na like Core UI, may ara na nga available online nga damo nga mga toolkits or mga APIs that make our work more convenient, no? May ara naman kita mga compilers yang or mga editors nga nami na gid, no? Kumpara sa una. So naga-evolve man ini siya. So ang lecture kaina is very general. So I hope you understand kung ano ang mga buot silingon sa to. Okay, naintindihan niyo ko, class?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm just citing an example. So, but if you are a developer, you know exactly what to do, no? Halimbawa, you are using Python, so may ara ka man dira nga mga platforms, may ara ka man libraries nga need, may ara ka man dira nga compiler, editor, kabalo ka man paano mag-install, paano ka halimbawa, gagamit ka sang mga command prompt or other platform. So, ikaw na naiabahala nga programmer kung paano mo na pang taod-taodon. Okay? So, I hope may naintindihan ka mo, class. And of course, sa mga bago lang naka-join sa klase, may reporting gali kita. And I give you the link. Ara man na siya sa VLE ang ano tag ni? Ang assignment sang report. So you can open and you can add your name. And also, you can open the VLE. May mga activity, may assignment na-add nga na dira. So para hindi ka mo malate. You have to comply that one. Kay balaan nyo next week. Midterm sang undergrad. So pwede ako nga the following week pa ako maghatag sang midterm. I will give time to those nga ulihin nag-join. And as well, sa mga nag-report sa bong, did you prepare your ano ni? Your evaluate ano tag ni? Assessment? Quiz
Yes, ma'am.
or okay, you please send it to me because I'll be the one to upload in the VLE kung naka ano lang siya ha, kung naka easy type or ano. You can also give me the link of your ano ga itawag ni? Google form if may ara na ka mong prepare nga Google form. Okay? So, for this, kaya nyo class nga mag-answer sa activity, duwa ka report, isa ka semana, duwa ka assessment. Hindi nyo pagdamuon class inyo nga questions ha, para hindi ka mo iyawan, para iyawan classmate yung sabat. Okay? So, ihatag lang sa akon and don't worry, ara na nakabutang inyo pangalan kung kamong nagatag sang question. As well, kung gusto nyo kamo pa mag-check. Okay, so thank you everyone and see you again next week. I will be uploading this recording for the benefit of those who are absent. So, duwa ka bilog nag-message sa akong kaina nga may brown out ko na sa ila. Okay? Have a wonderful weekend. So, bye-bye.
Bye-bye, ma'am.
Bye.
Hello.
Bye, ma'am.
Thank
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Doc.
Bye-bye.